Welcome to Have You Seen This? The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten visual media. All discussions will be spoiler heavy. You have been warned.
Yeah, that's part of my vocal warm-up. Yeah, anyway. Jen's like, oh, now I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do it right here because we're already on mic, so you know.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2. Welcome to Have You Seen This? It's Jen.
And Tim.
And this week we have someone pinch hitting. We had a guest for the end of the month.
But they died. They died suddenly.
It's spooky season.
It's Halloween. Yeah, it's Halloween. They were turned into a ghost. Their skeleton, we tried to interview him, but there's just teeth rattling.
It's really hard to talk to a skeleton, I've found.
Yeah, I know. It's just nothing.
They just clickety-clack, clickety-clack.
Yeah.
Clickety-clack, you guys. Clickety-clack.
Yeah, and all their commentary was just, it was really forced puns, trying to wedge, spooky words into normal phrases. It got tiresome.
You don't appreciate that bone dry humor.
Damn you, Mike.
Yeah, so we obviously got a comparable guest.
Better guest.
It is your friend and mine, Mike Rosen. That's Bitter Corella on Twitter. One of our favorite guests because he's on all the goddamn time. Mike, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being second choice. A distant second choice, but
it's perfect for our podcast.
Well, you know what? 2 is a bigger number than 1, so I'll take it.
Yeah, and 1's the loneliest number, so you don't want to.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't ever want to do that.
Oh yeah, fuck that shit.
Yeah, and we'll try and make this quick because I'm sure you have another podcast to guest on in a couple of minutes.
Well, I am very popular.
Hence why we have you on so often.
Everyone loves to have me on too, so that I can say this. I could go, yeah.
That is the kind of rapier wit that we have come to expect from Mike, and that's why we have him on tonight, talking about, what are we talking about, you guys?
We're talking about just another vampire movie. We're talking, I want to say, if you played Vampire's Kiss straight, I think that you would get this episode's movie.
Oh yeah, it kind of is the melancholy other side of Vampire's Kiss in a way.
Yeah, if you took Vampire's Kiss and just played it legit, if it was like an indie movie version of it, because the movie's from 76, 77, but it plays like an indie movie. It's like I don't know.
It is. It was made for $100,000.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it's not Twilight, but it does sort of re-examine the vampire mythology. It's George Romero's Martin.
Does Nicolas Cage kill anyone in Vampire's Kiss? I can't remember.
You're speaking into a coffee can, Mike. But yes, he does kill a partygoer at a club in the climax of the movie.
Okay. All right. So there are some deaths then. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Because Martin's got a pretty good kill rate in this, I think.
Yeah, he's surprisingly prolific for just this sad little wiener kid. We meet him. He's on a train into Pittsburgh, which already, that doesn't bode well for him.
Depressed yet?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just meeting with him, he's just this. I don't know what the word you would have used at the time, but I mean, the best way to describe him now is he's just kind of this incel. He's just kind of this pathetic, kind of do nothing twerp.
It's interesting because the movie right up front presents its main character as, I would say, fairly unsympathetic because he selects a victim and...
Oh, right. He murders a stranger after raping her.
Yeah, sexually assaults and murders a stranger. So that's wild, right? But interestingly, as the movie goes on, you start to feel bad for the guy. because this is a person trapped by his circumstances. And one movie that it reminded me of is I don't know if either of you have seen the sequel to Psycho 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
I've not.
Not
Psycho
bad.
2, Psycho harder.
I mean, Anthony Perkins is always good, and of course there's Meg Tilly, which, well, that's for me. But
yeah, no, I mean, there are a couple things I like about Meg Tilly. No.
The interesting thing about Psycho 2 is that you start to feel sorry for Norman Bates. And
yeah, living in his mother's shadow this whole time.
Well, it presents him as like someone who's trying to reintegrate into his community and is like, obviously stigmatized. And Anthony Perkins is so sympathetic in the role that you're like, oh my God, like this is like feeling bad for Ed Gein. But Martin kind of does the same thing where you really start to empathize with Martin, whether or not he's a vampire or merely a serial killer. The movie leaves it pretty ambiguous.
Merely a serial killer. And that's the thing that I really gravitate towards this movie about, is that it takes something that has been, this mythological creature, for centuries, and it updates him to the 70s. It takes away like all the supernatural elements, all the magical components, and it just says, in a society, what would a vampire look like without any of the like magical stuff around it. And the movie takes pains to establish that idea as well. Like we have, Martin goes to live with his uncle or cousin, I forget, an old white guy, and by white I mean the guy dresses all in white, but like he goes to live,
a man from the old country,
yeah, and like and when he goes to live with them, the old guy establishes the rules, like he's holds up a cross, he hangs garlic on the door, he's got all the supernatural things about how you deal with a vampire. He lays down the rules about living in this house, like you aren't gonna talk to my daughter, or you aren't going to kill anyone in the city because I know that you're a Nosferatu, and if I'm here to redeem you, but if I don't redeem you, then I'm gonna destroy you. He's like, I'm gonna stake you, basically. But all the superstitions are useless against him. Like he presses the cross up against his face, nothing happens. He takes a bite of the garlic, nothing happens. He's like, you don't understand. I'm not your mythological vampire. I'm just a guy who kills people and drinks their blood. Which I love it, as it's such a great deconstruction of a vampire in for a modern setting.
Now, Mike, had you seen this movie before?
I had never seen this movie before. I'd heard the name, but I think I kept getting it mixed up with the sequel to Willard for some reason.
Ben, Martin, same thing.
I mean, all movies that are just a name, they're very confusing.
It's kind of tough to get a grasp of it too.
Oh, these mononymic heroes, I just can't with them. But
I mean, how it is. You see the title of the movie, and you just feel like, I don't know what I'm getting.
Right. Lightyear.
I do like that it is.
About?
Yeah, I do like kind of like Tim said, that this is kind of a deconstruction of the vampire thing, in the sense that every serial killer who is dubbed the vampire of whatever city, because every city's got one. I think there's like the vampire of Sacramento, there's the vampire of Dusseldorf, there's a bunch of them, but they always kind of have this trajectory where it's like, they love raping and murdering, and they will drink blood too, and it's basically what Martin is doing this whole time. So it feels, I won't say it's like, it's not that it's historically accurate, but it feels like torn from the headlines. This could be a true story.
Yeah, if you take all the mythological stuff out of it, you just have, this kind of weird killer that maybe you're, lacking the vocabulary to describe, other than, just being like, well, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it kills people and drinks their blood. QED vampire. But it's like, no, it's just it's a weird kid who has like sexual hang-ups and can only sort of satisfy his sinister urges by killing people and drinking their blood, usually women, but he seems open-minded to just drinking the blood of whoever he comes across.
Well, because right up front with the extended sequence on the train, you realize like, oh, this is a young heterosexual man who, like a lot of other young heterosexual men, has difficulty relating to women in a normal context.
Please, Jen, I'm not that young.
I told you, Tim, I knew you would like this movie.
Right, yeah. He's as sympathetic as, Tyler Durden or Rorschach. You really identify with them.
I mean, to be clear, like a lot of young heterosexual men, yes, his trouble relating to women. And I think normally for most of us who have anxieties about the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever sex you choose, it's something which you generally can overcome a bit with age and maturity and experience. But the way that Martin lives his life, he's kind of obliged to go through this elaborate ritual to meet his needs. His needs not just being hunger, but also sex.
Yeah, he has a pathological approach to, human relations.
Yeah, and he makes that pretty explicit when he's talking to the radio DJ and saying, like, I've never done it. I've never done the sexy stuff while the girl was awake.
Yeah. He has performance issues, but he's finding ways to work through them.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't really even gotten past the first scene, because the first scene really does encapsulate the entirety of the movie. And one of the great things about it, one of the things that I like, is that even when he's because his modus operandi is to inject the person with like a sedative to knock them out, and then he can play with them to his heart's content and then bleed them dry. But even when he's trying to subdue this woman in the train car, she's like more like irritated than scared.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
She's very pissed.
Yeah, she's like fed up.
Like, what does she call him? She calls him like a twerp or something.
She's just like insulting this guy. It's like, this guy wants to rape and could kill you, but she's just like, oh, come the fuck on.
Yeah,
I like it because it's a very it feels like a very like organic representation of what might happen with a victim, because victims don't act in the same way every time.
Right.
And kind of the trope with female victims in, I think, like after the Second World War is, especially in the 50s, the women were obliged to just faint as to be easy for the monsters to carry. But this is a pretty realistic depiction of someone like fighting back against an assailant and just probably spitting with rage. Like, she's like, you fucking creep rapist, or whatever she calls him. And then you're confronted with Martin's reaction to that, where he's trying to assure her, like, I'm really careful with the needles. Like, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not gonna hurt you. And whenever you're confronted in a film or a story with an attacker, an assailant, or a monster that is expressing empathy for his victim, it's very unsettling.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna kill you. It won't hurt Annie. The other neat trope that is established in this first scene is that he kind of pauses a moment before breaking into a room, and he has this sort of fantasy version of how it's going to play out, where it's like and it's all presented in stylish black and white. It's very reminiscent of classic films, where he sees himself bust in his puffy shirt, and she turns around dramatically in her nightgown, and that's the way that it's going to play out. Like, he has this sort of fantasy about what sort of creature he is. Like, he has this sort of inflated idea of what he's doing. Like, it is this romanticized version of what he thinks he's doing, and then it turns into there's a woman who gets out of the bathroom, and she's got like her face cream on, and then they wrestle around, and she calls him a jerk and a loser, and then eventually like he gets his way, but like it just goes off in like this most embarrassing fashion. Not at all like what you want.
I mean, that is a theme for the whole film. Every single kill he does pretty much just goes south immediately. I mean, he's always successful, but it's always like an embarrassing struggle with all sorts of bloopers as it happens.
Good at it.
So,
yeah, and as Tim mentioned right off the bat that this is a reimagining of the vampire myth, and it strips it of the mythology. It also strips it of its kind of gothic romantic trappings, because the vampire is invariably like a very sexual mythological monster, and I think the apotheosis of that on film is probably Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
Oh yeah,
which really emphasizes the lushness and the sexuality and romance of the Dracula story. And in Martin,
it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, you're in a very drab, everyday world. This was shot on a specific reversal stock, so all the color is extremely desaturated. It's in the shittiest parts of wherever the fuck this is. I think
Pittsburgh.
Braddock, Pennsylvania, which seems like a
even
chill
worse,
place.
Yeah.
It's vampirism with the sexual aspect, but completely drained of romance.
Yeah, it's like if this guy had a girlfriend, if he was like as cool as he imagined himself to be, like he probably wouldn't be doing any of this.
Yeah,
he'd just be some guy hanging out. But like that's the great thing too about sort of the commentary on it. And to like jump to the end of the movie when he's just like kind of wandering around in this parade, he's kind of this this outcast figure, this he's like present but he's invisible. Like people don't pay attention to him, in the same way that like you wouldn't notice like your beta cuck Sigma because like he's not a charming, outgoing Chad type character. He's just this kind of loser dork meandering around in the background. But in the same way, you can kind of make that case for a vampire too. Like he's this reclusive character who sneaks out, takes advantage of people, ruins people's lives, and then disappears back to the bridge that he lives under.
But as much of a we keep saying that Martin's such a loser, but he is successful every time that he goes out to rape and kill someone. Yeah. So, he's Sigma, like you said, is the best way to describe him. Is going his own way. Yeah. He defines his own success.
Yeah, and the thing that I also think is interesting about his character is that he is a vampire, but I mean, also in a ways like, I drink people's blood, but that's not really what I'm about. And, like, doesn't let it define him. Like, he doesn't lean into it. There's a scene of him, like, sort of mocking his his uncle cousin, the old guy in white, where, like, he dresses up like Dracula and he puts in the fake teeth and he chases them around because that's, like, the old guy's perception of what a vampire is. It's like, this is what you want, right? It's, sort of the are you not entertained, scene of this movie. Where it's like, no, like, I'm just a guy who kills people and drinks their blood. I'm trying to find my way here, man.
Yeah.
It's funny because in Vampire's Kiss, there's also an extended bit where Nicolas Cage's character procures some very cheesy-looking vampire teeth.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's sort of imposter syndrome on being a vampire. It's like, I don't get it. Like, I'm killing people, but like I'm not cool. Like, when do I get to be cool for killing all these people?
And it's also interesting, too, because it's also interesting how, if you compare this to Vampire's Kiss, because in that movie, the themes of misogyny are just so inextricably woven throughout the movie. It is really a pretty explicit motivator of Nicolas Cage's character.
Yeah, I mean, women are,
movie.
they're food, basically. Chattel.
Yeah, and if you take a look at it, Martin, it's not, it isn't, like, leaving aside the the practice of, raping women while they're knocked out, which, I guess you could call that misogynist if you really want to be a stickler about it.
I suppose.
He doesn't seem to be motivated by hatred of women the way that a fake vampire like Peter Lowe or like a serial killer might be. It's this need that he is obliged to meet in kind of a maladaptive way.
Right. Yeah. It's in the. Yeah. I would say that like being a serial killer is like that in that it is this. It's this pathology that needs to be met. In that he's, I get a sense in the movie that it's like he's trying to be a normal person, but he's like, yeah, I also have this like need to kill. Like, because, he has other interests. He has, like, kind of this, delivery boy bullshit job, and, he has kind of an interest in, magic and, like, the debunking thereof. Like, stage magic, not magic with a K. But, although I guess that fits, too.
He's an incel, but, like, at least he's not a close-up magician.
Right, yeah. You can always be worse.
Those people are freaks.
Yeah, but, he's, so he isn't, like... He isn't reveling in being a vampire. It's just it's this thing that prevents him from kind of leading a normal life. It's the thing that, makes him a pariah. It's this, cross he has to bear, even though, he's not negatively affected by crosses. So
yeah. Well, I think it's kind of interesting because in this movie, what's his name? The uncle cousin gives us kind of the history of the family. And this is a family that from the old world, and they clearly believe, or old country, and they clearly believe in vampires. They think there's a family curse that certain like vampires will surface in the family bloodline every so often. And Martin has been singled out as one of these vampires. So it almost makes you wonder, like, how much of that is like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Just the family's like, okay, Martin, you're the vampire. And he's like, all right, I guess I got to do the blood.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing that the cousin, sister, daughter. I really should have paid closer attention to this.
She's the Christina is the granddaughter of Tate Kuda, who is the old man who is obliged to house Martin.
Yeah,
Martin is his distant cousin.
Yeah, so she has kind of the prescriptive approach to this, which is like, look, he only acts this way because you tell him this is the way he is. It's kind of like, you tell a bad kid that they're going to be a fuck up, and surprise. They kind of end up, being that thing that you accuse them of being.
Well, and this movie is kind of interesting in that it also seems to be reflecting certainly a cultural attitude which had started in the 60s and, was still the case in the 70s because there was still a lot of societal upheaval with Vietnam and second wave feminism and all that. There's like a huge generational divide in this movie where the younger people, Martin being quote unquote young, even though he claims to be 84 years old, but you see young people really chafing against kind of the practices of the older generation.
There's there's just like a toss off line where it is Tonto whatever. And he's talking to the daughter cousin. I already left my
Christina. Christina's kind of shitty boyfriend.
Yeah, kind of shitty boyfriend, and and it's like kids these days don't want to work. It's like, oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, do you really think that there's fulfilling work for an intelligent and capable person in the shit town? Because it is a shit town.
Yeah, like the only thing that I know of the city is that they had a parade and there's a wrecking yard.
No offense to our listeners from Braddock, Pennsylvania.
It's Pennsylvania. It's shit. Yeah. I do like the bit, though, where Christina, who kind of represents, this modern way of thinking, with, the Tante Kuda being the old superstitious ways, and she's like, no, she's the practical young person, and she's talking to Martin, and she's just saying, like, you shouldn't have to, be treated like this. You could be in a hospital or a home. And she just says it right to his face. Like that would be great. Don't you agree, Martin? It's just such a weird thing. But again, that is probably the way most people treat, someone who they appears to have some sort of mental illness, I guess. I don't know that she knows what Martin's
Well, it would have been at
deal
least,
is.
a modern approach to it rather than be like, hey, Tanakuda's going to invite some priests over and we're going to have a kind of bullshit goofy exorcism.
Yeah.
That you aren't going to believe in.
I mean, that's the thing is, does anyone... Because the thing is, Martin does his stuff alone. No one sees him do it. No one catches him killing people. So you have to wonder, like, what Christina actually thinks is going on. Because she seems to think that, like, oh yeah, everyone just treats Martin like he's a vampire because they're nuts. But she doesn't seem to think... She seems to think Martin has something wrong with him. But it seems to be more just like, he's really awkward. He can't talk to people. Clearly, so he should be in a home. But I don't think she really thinks he goes out and drinks blood.
Yeah, because the way that Martin appears, especially toward the beginning of the film, is that, I mean, he almost seems to have like a selective mutism at time. Like he's often unable to speak to people or look them in the eye or whatever. And I'll leave it to YouTube essayists to say that he's autistic coded or whatever. But
no, I mean, I'm just gonna leave him as an incel. Like he's just shy and awkward.
Well, yeah, because like
this is
it's like you could read it that way, but it's enough to say that Martin is someone who is isolated and stigmatized within his family, and that's the experience of a lot of people with
on the spectrum,
mental health afflictions or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it doesn't even have to be that specific. It's like anybody who's felt like the black sheep of their family. And someone
he needs
who
he needs a supportive group like, what we do in the shadows. Like he needs, to find his own way.
Yeah. Well, the problem in this movie is, like you said, Martin is an incel, and he's calling up this radio DJ who is basically kind of egging him on. So he's basically, it's like he's being radicalized into vampirism
through AM radio,
by this radio DJ. Yeah, exactly.
There is...
Wow, and this prefigured Rush Limbaugh. No.
Yeah, and that is interesting in the way that sort of the radio disc jockey is complicit in the in the crimes of this vampire kid, because like they know that he's going out. I mean, you must be able to connect the dots that this guy's calling in and being like, I don't know when I'm gonna do this again, how much longer I can hold off before I kill again. And also it's like, couple in suburbia found drain of their blood. That's interesting. Like, someone has to put the two and two together.
Either they're egging on someone that they believe is legitimately a killer, or they're goading someone who is severely mentally ill.
Right, yeah, which, I mean, take your pick. Which is the defensible position? Neither.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, how there are certain people online who will become, like, the focus of an online mob, and it happens with much more rapidity now because
people are bored and have nothing to do.
Yeah, the speed of social media networks. So it's like every day, like there's a new Twitter main character, but in the slightly older internet, you had people like Chris Chan who were literally like being egged on to do stupid shit by people who just wanted to point and laugh at them, and it's not even intended to be a defense of Chris Chan or somebody like that, but the kind of the ethics of taking a disturbed person and trying to be like, oh, like let's see what fucked up thing we can make them do now.
Yeah,
like the DJ and his audience kind of, well, they don't prefigure this notion. I mean, I think this is a thing which has been present for a long time in human society. Like as humans, like we really love to point and laugh and scapegoat. It's just that in current times, it's just the pace of it has been tremendously accelerated because of the nature of social media.
Yeah, it's like the thing that I sent Jen, where it's like, we've met the mob and he's us.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing about Martin, which is going back to something which Tim mentioned, which I can't quite remember in detail because I have a mind like a steel sieve, but it made me think about something that I actually think about a lot. And the character of Martin kind of embodies this. Because he is so stigmatized by his family, there's this intense belief in a family curse. And people just don't like the kid, or they terminally misunderstand him, and he does go out and commit like really heinous acts. It does make me think a lot about the kind of cases of outrages or a crime that come as a result of someone living in an incredibly like just completely fucked family environment, where someone has been severely abused from like a young age, and they grow up to be a monstrous person. And those are the cases that are really disquieting to me, because obviously when someone has committed a truly heinous crime, you don't just want to go like, oh, well, you know, like they had a fucked up childhood. So, you know, there obviously should be some kind of redress or healing for everyone affected and an effort to get that person help. But the thing that always occurs to me is like, did this person have a snowball's chance in hell of turning out normal?
Yeah, it's like trying to provide help at like the 11th hour. It isn't sort of preventative care. It's just like emergency care. That's all we can really provide.
Yeah. So Jen, what you're saying is that you should just let sickos go. I guess that's what you're saying, huh?
Jen, you need to be tougher on crime. The other vibe that I get from this character, you know, sort of like Kyle Rittenhouse or you know, either of the like Columbine killers, where there's kind of these like marginalized, you know, like loser dorks who then go on, you know, as part of their personal narrative to assert themselves by killing people, allegedly.
Well, I think that like I feel like that. And, you know, this probably just has a lot to do with my personal reaction to the character, but I feel that Martin is pretty far on the spectrum from more malignant individuals like that. I mean,
I think that they kind of exist in the same margins of society. Like, that's what I'm saying.
True, but like their motives are extremely different. Like, Martin doesn't seem to kill with much
well, he kills out of compulsion.
Malice. Yeah, and you even wonder if he truly like understands what he's doing, and you know that goes back to what I was saying about these cases of really egregious abuse, where like all the genetic switches and the lack of nurturing and circumstances have been flipped to the correct thing, like the correct side, to make a person like truly monstrous in, you know, the popular vernacular, where it's like, well, like, does this person even have the capacity to understand what they've done? Like, there's a podcast called This Is Actually Happening, where it is accounts of people talking about a traumatic event in their lives. And one of the most popular episodes they did was an episode about someone who had dissociative identity disorder, which is an incredibly rare disorder. It's not like the trendy thing that was so big in like
isn't like having
the
ticks
90s
on TikTok.
with the satanic panic, or like you know, kids pretending that they have alters on TikTok. I think those kids have other problems, like actual dissociative identity disorder.
Hey, you're right.
Problem is too much video
games.
Too
much reading.
Actual dissociative identity disorder comes from like incredibly severe trauma at a young age for the most part. And the person on this episode of the podcast had basically been sold and passed around from the time they were 3 by their parents, which again is as much as it looms large in the public imagination right now with QAnon and blah blah blah, I think it actually is like pretty rare, but you know, in these rare cases it does happen. And with a person like that, you wonder, like, how can you even approach being normal when everything about your environment from a young age has just been so distorted? The people who are supposed to care for you have mistreated you so egregiously. And you wonder, like, what Martin's childhood was like. You know, if he was like was he like a vampire child? Like, how did this happen?
Well, he's kind of born into a framework where, you know, the family has, you know, this legacy, and also, you know, this is my, you know, headcanon, that, you know, there may be some genetic component to it as well. I mean, you know, you figure that people from a certain lineage all, you know, kind of are, you know, tend to, you know, look and act and react, you know, the same. You know, you're brought up in a kind of in a certain family dynamic. So whether or not it is, you know, the curse of the vampire, you know, like if you want to dress it up, you know, the way that Tanta Kuda does, you know, if you want to couch it in language from, you know, the 1600s or however that the family uses to explain, oh yeah, this is the curse of the vampire. Like, you can explain it that way, or you can explain it as, you know, this is this is a kid who has, you know, the wrong genetic disposition for the wrong environment. You know,
he's got porphyria.
It's nature and nurture working together against this kid. And, you know, the curse of the family is that, yeah, you're going to get some weirdos just because, you know, maybe they're more inclined towards, you know, psychopathy. And then eventually, you know, one is brought up in the wrong environment, and he develops these behaviors. And so that is, you know, someone from, you know, the old country saying, oh yeah, by the way, Martin's going to totally turn into a serial killer, I mean vampire.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting because Tanta Kuda actually mentions, I think, the guy that, you know, has fingered Martin as the vampire is the senior vampire in the family, the oldest living vampire who kind of, I guess, bosses everyone around, and the rest of the family is scared to defy him or they'll incur his cursed wrath or something. So it's like,
can be powerful, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, this guy's like, yeah, I can tell Martin's that, you know, game recognized game. There's also the fact that they mention one of the other, I guess, vampires in the family, that girl who killed herself, which is kind of a, you know, kind of a chilling, portent, I guess. Like, oh yeah, we fingered her as a vampire too, and she killed herself to escape the curse. It's like, maybe she killed herself because you said she was a vampire, you know? I mean, you know, it's like there's a lot of cause and effect that are not very clear in this story, but, you know.
Yeah, and you can also kind of, you know, you can dress it up in other ways too. Like, you know, if you're, you know, a gay uncle or something, and you're like, yeah, that kid is gay. Like, we knew forever. Even though, like, if you don't know. But it's like, yeah, we know that you're going to have, you know, you're going to have problems growing up because of, you know, the situation that you find yourself in. I mean, maybe if Martin grew up in a different environment, like, you know, if you took him as being like a gay kid who doesn't realize it yet, and then, you know, if you put him in like the wrong environment, yeah, like he could, you know, or if he was trans or something, you know, he could, you know, end up killing himself, or, you know, have just, you know, having a difficult life. But if you put him in the right environment, maybe they don't turn out that way. So it is an interesting allegory for people who are marginalized and have a bad fit with, you know, their surroundings.
Yeah. Well, Martin, as we know, this is goodbye rep, because
yeah, which is why Martin is such an interesting. He's such a sympathetic character, despite the fact that we see him kill like 5 people.
He's just trying to find his way in this crazy world, you know?
Yeah, again, I'm saying, like, yeah, I drink blood, but that's not what I'm about. Yeah.
And plus, I mean, I think the fact that every time he tries to kill, it just, you know, he screws it all up. You're kind of like rooting for him. Like, come on, Martin. You know, like when he's stalking that one housewife and he thinks, oh, her husband's gone, I'm going to get her. And he busts in and she's got like, you know,
she's seen someone.
Yeah, she's seen someone. So suddenly he's got to take down like 2 people at once. And I think that's actually, is that Tom Savini, the special effects guy, playing?
Tom Savini is like the deadbeat guy who is was a sister cousin.
Oh, that was him. Okay, never mind.
I didn't recognize him. I had to like look in the credits, and I'm like, it says Tom Savini's in here, but like, where is he?
I was kind of like, he doesn't look like his caricature on The Simpsons.
Right? So. Yeah, he doesn't look like he doesn't look like an incarnate vampire hunter walking around. He just looks like some guy from Jersey.
Yep. But it takes a long time, and Martin is really he's really working. I mean, he's really earning this bloodbath because you know, he's they've got him locked out of the house. He's running around, and
He's
these
fucking
two
around on the
victims.
phone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and plus these two victims are so obnoxious that it's hard not to root for Martin in this because he's just screaming the whole time like "call the cops," and she's like, "I don't know the number." It's like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
And it's interesting too because those characters are kind of in a bind too, where it's like, why don't you get the cops over here? Yeah, let everyone know that I'm cheating on my husband. It's like we kind of can't involve other people. It'd be like, oh, that's weird. The neighbors said that there's an ambulance taking a guy out of the place the weekend that I was gone. You want to explain that to me? You're like,
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's got a comfortable suburban life that she doesn't want to explode for this dick that she's getting.
Yeah.
It is also funny. Similarly, in I think it was Hitchcock's Frenzy, where where the killer is in a similar situation where like one of his victims grabs like a boutonniere or some kind of pin that he has, and then like he's in this frenzy, I guess, to retrieve it so that he doesn't get caught. And the audience is similarly sympathetic, where they're just like, frenzy, what have you gotten yourself into this time? It isn't
Frenzy,
like,
my boy, you've done it again.
yeah. Oh no, how is the manic serial killer going to get out of this one?
Lovely.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, yeah, because Martin, again, when he he doesn't do the blood as much when he's got the sexy stuff during the daytime because he doesn't get the shakes quite as much. But when he finally does, and he goes into the city, and it kind of goes all wrong. He ends up with the cops chasing him. He gets into this like gambling ring or something, and then there's a shootout. I think eventually he
accidentally stumbles into a blaxploitation film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another.
I was gonna say eventually he just like bludgeons a couple of hobos, doesn't he?
Right, yeah, because he's wandering around because he's like, man, like I'm not so sure about this vampire thing anymore. It's like it used to be really easy, just like select a victim, fill up my syringe, bam, I got my blood orgy. But now he's looking around, he's like, I don't know, that one doesn't look that good, that one's not that pretty. So he's just kind of stumbling around the city, and then he finds two hobos. And, he bludgeons them to death and, drinks their blood and goes through the whole thing. He doesn't really seem that into it. I don't know. He's just going through the motions. And then I think, like, the cops... that does get a little fuzzy for me, too. The cops, like, know that he's around, or, like, there is, this guy killing people. And so, like, they're after him. But then, he stumbles into, like, a Tarantino cast-off, movie. And that's great, too, because it sets up this, like, funny dynamic in the same way that he was just had a simple plan of killing a bored housewife and drinking her blood, but instead he gets wrapped up in this whole affair. And it's the same thing too, where it's like, look, I just wanted to kill a couple of drifters, but now there's this drug deal that he's queering, and then the cops show up chasing him, but now they get into a shootout with the drug dealer and the drug buyer, and it just becomes a whole thing.
Well, fortunately, the cops really fuck it up too, and it ends up looking like one of Ace's livid videos.
Yeah, it's
what do you expect from fucking Pittsburgh cops,
right? So yeah, and the climax, the climax of this movie is like a 2-minute action scene that ends up with everybody dying except for Martin. So again, like he gets off scot-free. This guy who just killed 2 people in cold blood.
He disappears into the night like a vampire. I do like though he has to he regroups in this public bathroom where there are these 2 derelicts just, I guess, taking shits while reading the newspaper.
Shooting up whatever you do, yeah.
I mean, they're sitting on the toilets, but I'm not clear if they're actually shitting. But
it's a really informal restroom, yeah.
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh, I mean, it's to be expected.
It's just the culture.
Yeah. It's so it's there's this big frenzied action scene. The ending to this movie comes so quick though.
Right, yeah. Well, when he's in the restroom with like the 2 guys, and they're like, "Oh, you got to get yourself to Mexico. Like, if you want to beat this rap, you got to go south." And like that could very well be, what happens, because he's been calling into the radio show this whole time, being like, "I don't know how much longer I can hold out." And the audience is eating it up. He's becoming legendary. In the way that
He's the Count.
Yeah, he's the Count. It's like
They love it when he goes 1, 2.
I say it's kind of like that movie with Patton Oswalt. Was that Big Fan?
Yeah.
Where it's like, he's calling in like every day or every night into this call-in show, to offer his like perspective on, this sports team rivalry. And, same thing with the Count. Like, people are just eating up like this little story that he has, but then, the Count disappears. And it seems like, he's going to go to Mexico because it's like, it's getting too hot here. He's like, I'm getting sloppy. The last, couple of kills didn't go really smoothly. Like, I got the cops after me on the last one. I can see how he's like, I need to relocate. And I can see if you're a vampire, if you're going out, killing people every night, eventually, it gets a little too much for you. So you got to relocate. And it seems like that's where he's going. He's going to disappear again.
Yeah, especially hard because he doesn't have any of the vampire powers. He specifically, says it's got a lot easier with the needles, but it would be really cool if it was like in the movies and you could like make women do what you wanted. But he can't even do that, he says. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great character kind of complaint that shows what his status is. Like he can't even get women to do what he wants. He has to drug them and then have his way with them.
Yeah,
but like the interesting change to that though is that he does finally, I forget what causes the change in him, but he does go to, because he's a delivery boy, which means he gets to meet a lot of bored housewives, a lot of women with nothing to do, kind of neglected, which is
no one to do.
Yeah. So he's got an in a lot of ways there. And, he's kind of not sure of himself enough a lot of the time to like not really act on it. But eventually, he rocks up to one of his regulars, and he's like, I know that you want to have sex with me, so let's do that.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating because, like you said, or I think Jen said, he's kind of in some ways autism coded, or something. Because like the points when he's talking to that woman where he clearly they're not on the same level. She seems, because he thinks they're talking about vampirism, but like she's like, no, I'm talking about just like not having kind of like an inner life or an affect or something. And I wish I had what you had, and you could just like turn your feelings off. And he thinks she's like,
oh yeah, that's true, because it just hit me because there is that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but like I just realized, because there is that scene where like after they fucked, she's lying on the couch like in tears, and he's completely confounded. He's like, why are you crying? Is it something I did?
Yeah, he thinks it's him.
Yeah, like he thinks that she's worried that she's knocked up or something like that. But I mean, this is really a woman who's like crying over like the way that her whole life has gone.
Yeah.
Like, she's a very stunning woman, but she's like, completely alone, and now she's fucking the delivery boy, and she's probably thinking about like, like, was this a bad idea or whatever?
It's just like, how did it come to this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then his reaction is so naive that she even says it. She's like, what I love about you, Martin, is that you just don't have an opinion. And it's true, because like you and this is an extrapolation, but you imagine like the way that her husband probably is, where he's probably like a more typical guy who is probably
they probably don't have a great relationship.
More, and is probably more overtly masculine, and probably like has opinions that he's perfectly happy to offer whether you want them or not.
Or just for whatever reason, you just kind of get saddled with like, this home life in the suburbs, and you're like, that Simpsons when, they move to a nicer town and Marge has nothing to do because the whole place is automated. So what does she do? She sits there and, drinks a bottle of wine, and it's like, what did my life come to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And because, and there are so many different ways that you could read Martin. I mean, there are probably a lot of different diagnoses that you could apply to the guy, but I think it's enough just to say that he is socially awkward and dissociated, and it could be like any number of reasons.
Yeah, you don't need to like say that he's autistic just to be like, this creep is weird.
Yeah, he's definitely he marches to the beat of his own drummer, and he has trouble with people.
He's a man going his own way. Yes.
Yeah. Though the bit that I thought was interesting is when she's the woman is like, can you come and fix my fence? And he's like, you don't want me to fix your fence. You want to have sexy times. And it's like, wow, he read between the lines. He's not as socially inept as he seems to think. He figured out the signals,
Yeah, he's just kind of a sad loser, doesn't believe in himself. Like, he can't make it with a normal woman, but he can, go through the whole thing of filling a syringe with a sedative and then killing someone and drinking their blood. Like, that's his wheelhouse.
Well, if only this was the cozy horror version of Martin, it could be a story about him finding the confidence to overcome his social awkwardness and be a Chad vampire.
Yeah, be the real Dracula that he was meant to be.
And I think that I love the expression "a Dracula." It's so funny. But I think it's important that as Martin gets like a modicum of social support, like from his cousin, who isn't just like, oh, you're a vampire. She's like, that's a bunch of bullshit, and actually makes an effort to speak to him and connect with him. And as he sees this kind of bored, lonely housewife like reaching out to him, he does become like more self-actualized, and that's the kind of thing that genuinely helps people. Like when you are no longer isolated and are able to connect with other human beings, because we are like a social species, it goes a long way toward improving your mental health. But I mean,
and she gets out too.
She
breaks the cycle.
And Tatakuda, like being of the old country, like, what's his answer? Get a priest.
Right, yeah. It's thoughts and prayers. It is like pray the gay away. When it's
I have to say, I really love the modern priest.
Yeah. With his helmet hair and, smoking cigs.
Yeah, where Tatakuda's like, the devil is everywhere. And he's all like, so you see The Exorcist? Man, that was something, huh?
He's the pragmatic religious figure. It's like, God and the devil and demons, but it's like, hey, why don't you come to church and, maybe sell some stuff at a yard sale to, keep our doors open.
Yeah.
Why don't you rap with me?
Yeah, he's one of those priests who's like, God, it's really kind of a metaphor when you think about it.
Well, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, you have, you have your old country people who take the Bible and religious teachings like completely literally, and then the younger generation where it's like, oh, all that stuff is a metaphor.
Yeah, it's like, why don't you just be cool, man?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why
say rap with me.
It was very funny when he's like, yeah, you should talk to Father Zemeckis. He's really into that. And Tatakuda's like, Zemeckis, you say? And you can just see the wheels turning. He's like, it was great. I love that bit.
So talk to this other old, weird, superstitious guy.
Yeah. Though that exorcism doesn't really go very well. It's interesting because Martin's reaction is pretty deadpan at first. Which,
it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like being an adult and having your parents throw like a kid's birthday party for you. You're just kind of like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Are we seriously doing an exorcism?
It was interesting because I'm like, well, how can there's no good way to react when this happens to you, because no matter what you do, they're just gonna be like, oh yeah, clearly, that's the devil in you. If you sit there just not reacting, like, yeah, the devil's making him do that. And if you play along and scream and jump around, it's like, yeah, the devil. So it's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's a witch trial.
Yeah. But
it's the specter of Regan McNeil.
But I think like this is what makes Martin chase Tentacuda around the playground with the vampire cape. Yeah. I think that comes after this bit.
Yeah, it's after like, hey, you want me to be a vampire? Blah, do the thing.
Why is that? Why is the old stereotype about vampires that they go bleh?
Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry,
Mike.
Tim.
They don't do that anymore. Like post Twilight, they certainly don't do that. But why was that a thing in the 20th century?
I always-
Vampires went bleh.
I thought it was because like Bela Lugosi, like, or I don't know if he actually
Yeah.
did it, but like people saying, "I want to suck your blood," and it kind of just became a thing.
I thought
Oh,
we
yeah,
already
it's like
talked
the
about
whole-
this. It was a bad Bela Lugosi impression.
Yeah, it's like how people thought Cary Grant went Judy, 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 or whatever. It's like, no, he never fucking said that. Or, James Cagney never said, you dirty rat.
Yeah.
It's more people, what do you call that? Mandala effect or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
I
It's
guess.
like how, did you know the end of Little Women doesn't say they were no longer little girls, they were now little women?
Mo
No, Bob
Sislak lied to
Odenkirk
me.
said that.
Ah, my little women. Or
Say the line.
Yeah, or
Say the line, Bart.
yeah, or like it isn't Luke, I'm your father. Like he doesn't even say Luke in it. So
Yeah. He says, no, I am your
yeah.
father.
So
You know Scotty never says beam me up?
what?
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, it turns out vampires aren't even magic. They're just a storied history of serial killers. They're serial killers with panache.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we didn't get a chance to touch on earlier that I like about the the maidens that he seduces, because the the black and white classic movie monster trope that carries through the whole movie is sort of his fantasy about I'm seducing this maiden, I'm hunted by villagers, I'm this rakish outcast, but like the women in it are sort of, if you needed to come up with a vampire mythology using a depressed East Coast town in the 70s, like it seems like that's how you would present victims to this vampire. It's like, where do you find like an unguarded desperate woman? Like it isn't some woman who's like easily seduced. It is a bored housewife. And I just love them. I love George Romero recontextualizing the vampire for the sort of depressed, bored suburban housewife.
Yeah, because Martin isn't the only character in this movie who's isolated and friendless.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of a condition of the culture that he lives in.
Yeah, and it doesn't have like the same romance, like going back to what you're saying earlier about Coppola's Dracula of it isn't Winona Ryder pleading, take me away from all this death. It is a housewife being like, I wish I could feel like you. I wish I could be like how you are. Where you can just kind of turn it off.
It's George Romero's The Feminine Mystique.
Yeah.
George Romero's My Secret Garden. That reminds me of a book that I had as a teenager, which was kind of like, for me, it was like, baby's first sociological study. And I wish I could remember the title of it, because it was, part of it was very much in the vein of Martin.
Oh.
Because it was an explication of the origins of the vampire myth, and how these things came about in the old country, kind of the way that vampires were conceptualized back at the time, and how they slowly evolved into these very sexy creatures in the 20th century. Your Bela Lugosi's, your Frank Langella's, what have you.
Christopher
And the second half of the book was case studies, basically, of people who had adopted vampirism. On reflection, like as a kind of coping mechanism, because the cases that I remember from it, these were very deeply traumatized people who did the vampire thing because, it was a way of escaping into a fantasy, or feeling like they had regained like a bit of control in a chaotic life or something like that, which is maybe what Martin is doing. And I think Tim might have said it, where it's like, okay, you think I'm a vampire, I'll be a fucking vampire.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I guess if that's what you want me to be, if someone tells you, you're broken or damaged or, a weirdo or a freak or something, it'd be like, yeah, it seems to be the consensus. And you just kind of fall into that role.
Yeah.
And, with the whole vampire mythos, especially now being, like, profoundly sexualized, like, with sex being such an intrinsic part of the human experience, it was really common to, like, the case studies in this book where for these people, vampirism was definitely a sexual thing. It was part of their sex play or fetish, and much the way that for Martin, for the most part, barring like the hobo attacks that he makes out of desperation, the need for blood is completely tied up with the need for sex as well. And in fact, when he starts, when he finally starts getting awake pussy, he feels like he doesn't feed as often.
Yeah, it's fulfilling some kind of need, which, he is displaced onto this, need to kill. Or need for blood, which, requires killing someone.
Yeah. Mike, you've
drunk blood.
Dabbled in...
I've dabbled in being a vampire.
Yeah.
He's more of a witch, though, folks.
I just don't like getting up early. That's my excuse.
Although you do like sleeping in a box filled with dirt.
That,
Tim's like, hey, as long as I can do it for 16 hours at a stretch, I'll sleep wherever.
Yeah, I will sleep in dirt if it means I get, twice the normal amount of sleep. That's fine with me.
Uninterrupted, baby.
Oh,
but
so
Mike, what I was going to say, because you are a person who has dabbled a lot in mythology and folklore as part of your own writings and comic work. Have you read much about these kinds of cases in real life where people were acting out a vampire fantasy?
Not too many. I've seen a couple, and it's usually kind of it's the ones I remember reading was, I think, the Vampire Sacramento. I cannot remember about many of the details other than that name, but I think it was like a guy at a boarding house was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just like go out and kill people and drink their blood. But there's a lot of from what I've seen, a lot of these vampire fantasies, there's a sexual element as well as this kind of the idea that which I think is not just in vampire killers but also in vampirism, just that blood is life. It's the life force. It's an obvious, and it's a very obvious idea, because it's like, oh, you're losing your blood, you're dying. I wonder if those are connected. Maybe if I got more blood in me, I could live more, perhaps even be immortal. So, it's and that's an idea that pops up a lot when people get into like vampire killing. And it's like, well, that makes sense, because that's literally what a vampire does. It drinks your blood so it can continue living forever.
Yeah, because I think the case with Richard Chase, the Vampire Sacramento, was that he had a delusion that his own blood was turning into powder, and the only way to stop that was to find victims. Sometimes they were animals, but unfortunately, as his mental illness progressed, he began attacking people.
Yeah. Do you remember, what was that movie we saw? The vampires, the Loneliness of Wolves. You remember that one? The two I don't know, the two gay vampires in Germany. They were trying to sell watches. I don't
remember that one.
They were just trying to sell watches.
For a minute, I thought you were going to bring up Life Force.
No, that was good. That was much.
Mike and I just talked about Life Force on a very good podcast. I would even call it our sister podcast called Saucer Cinema. I believe that episode will be out very soon.
Well, I mean, not better than us.
Well, no. I mean, we are the gold standard.
That's true, yeah.
If for whatever reason you have tired of listening to every one of our episodes on repeat, you might want to check out Saucer Cinema, hosted by Alex.
Yeah, it's a good show. check it out.
It is.
Um,
I highly recommend the episode where Mike talks about visiting Eric Von Daniken's theme park.
oh yeah, that's a good one. I like it because I was on it.
That makes sense, yeah.
But no, what was this other movie you were talking about?
I think it was called The Loneliness of Wolves. It was vaguely based on some one of these one of the serial killers, I think, who was like also dubbed the vampire of something. I think it was Fritz Harman, vampire of Germantown of some name. And he was, I don't know, operating in, I think, right after the First World War, and you know, abducting transients to murder and to fuck, murder, and drink blood. You know, that old game, fuck, murder, blood,
Fuck, murder,
drink.
kill, yeah.
Yeah.
The Tenderness of the Wolves, and that's actually that was actually produced by Rainier Werner Fassbinder.
Oh, that's the one. Yes.
Now I remember that. Yeah, I remember watching that at your old place.
Yeah, it's incredibly. It's like oh, you want to watch two gay guys like just hang around in like train stations and like try and sell watches to randos, and occasionally they kill someone, but like there's really. All things considered, that movie is extremely slow. There's not enough fucking and not enough killing.
Just watch Withnail
It's no Apartment Zero.
That's true. I mean, that one didn't even have any blood in it, but
it's a banger though.
Yeah.
So he's this creep, this marginalized figure. He has his fuck buddy, and she kills herself. She slits her own wrist trying to drink her own blood. Which
is that what she was doing?
Well, she had a glass and a razor.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't draw that connection. That's actually.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I saw it.
I thought she had just done the kind of thing that Martin staged at the beginning of the film, which is he made it look like a suicide with pills and whatnot. I assumed that she had swallowed a bunch of pills and sliced her wrist in the bathtub.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I like the idea that because she was talking about how she wanted to have what Martin had. So
yeah, so that's what I got out of it. I mean, I could be incorrect, but yeah. So she kills herself in a vampiric way, which an encounter with a vampire can go one of two ways. You can either be killed or be made a vampire. So that was my interpretation. It might be incorrect. It might have been staged. It might have just been her killing herself, just to kill herself. But yeah, that she commits suicide, but the unfortunate irony in all this is that it gets pinned on Martin. Tantakuda says, "I told you don't kill anyone in the city, and you went and killed someone in the city. Now I have to destroy you." And the penultimate scene of the movie is Martin getting a stake driven through his heart by Tantakuda. which, like you said, it is kind of abrupt. We had that scene of him getting away scot-free from the cops and the drug deal and the hobo murder, which is it's a tight scene. It's reminds me of, or maybe it was what inspired the donut shop scene towards the end of Boogie Nights. It's you have the one character who's like just in the thick of it, and they manage just by happenstance to get out, but then he lives the rest of the day, and then Tantakuda stakes him.
Yeah, and buries him in the backyard, and just throws grass seed on top of him.
Buries him with a cross so he can't come back to life. All the superstitions, persist. But then the great thing is that, and this is a theme that we've encountered a couple of times already. It is said very elegantly in Crash, about the fate of James Dean, where he died and became immortal. We see that same thing with the other film that we reviewed recently, Town That Dreaded Sundown. There's the Phantom Killer who was never caught, who now only exists in legend. In this movie in 1977, there was a guy who calls himself Dracula, calls into a radio show, but then he stopped calling. But we never really found out what happened to him. So in the same way, he kind of disappears into legend.
And I really feel like what would end up happening is that, 30 or 35 years would go by. Tantakuda would be long dead. The house would be sold. Mm-hmm. And they would, when they were renovating the house and digging up the old lawn, they'd come across poor Martin's skeleton. They'd do a DNA test. And they'd be like, wait a minute, what the fuck?
Right, yeah.
They'd be like, the DNA says this bitch is 100% vampire.
He tested positive for vampirism.
Yeah, and then there would be an Oxygen or Investigation Discovery limited series about the Braddock, Pennsylvania vampire.
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait to hear about this on Somebody Knows Something. Last podcast on the left.
I also like too that when they're playing the the radio the DJ taking calls over over Tantakuda seeding the ground over Martin's grave, that at the end there's this like creepy little voice that it's like, oh, I know where he is. And it's like it is kind of a it is a frame of porn sliced into the end of Fight Club. It is Andy Kaufman's writing partner watching Tony Clifton on stage at the end of Man in the Moon.
Yeah.
It is being like, oh, like this guy's still out there in the zeitgeist, in some form or another. So he doesn't really die, and I think that that's a great ending, despite the movie kind of undercutting its theme by just like, oh yeah, this character that we spent all this time with, oh yeah, then he gets brutally murdered suddenly.
Yeah, it's a very short and brutal end, and it comes just as Martin is sort of starting to come to an understanding. Like he says to the DJ, like you, I forget how he puts it, but he's like, you live your life and you adapt to it, and he doesn't have a chance to break out the way that his cousin Christina did, because his fucking Tantakuda
he has
like
no
stakes
support
him to the bed.
network.
Yeah.
Because even his cousin, sister, niece, whatever, she mentions like this isn't a forever relationship with this guy. Like he's a means to an end. He is my way of getting out. Like I'm not going to marry this guy, but I am using him to get out of this fucked up situation. Martin doesn't have any recourse like that, unless he wants to live in the guest house of one of these lonely housewives. But I don't see that happening.
There is only the desert for you.
Right.
Yeah. I do like how every time Martin goes to kill someone, it's like he fucks it up. It's this long process and everything. But when Tantakuda goes to kill someone, bam, he's dead. It's just
that is experience on your side.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is why tradition and old-fashioned common horse sense are so important. Because
when hunting vampires, yes.
Yeah, it's not like these fucking Tumblr vampire hunters who are all about, here's my multicolored vampire hunter flag that says I'm an aromantic vampire hunter.
Yeah, I'm a vampire ally.
Yeah.
In the old country, they just staked a motherfucker and they were done with it.
Yeah, you don't waste a lot of time like gaslighting or gatekeeping these vampires. You just stake them.
And also,
it's the Gordian knot.
Why can't you find a job in Braddock, Pennsylvania? Why don't you go to the offices and ask to talk to the boss?
Yeah,
I'm sure that you could get a job that way.
A firm handshake. Look him in the eye. They'll happily pay you $2.13 an hour.
I think they'll appreciate your moxie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the what I love about this movie is how it is so wedded to its time and place in a way that is really like a lot of movies are dated, and this movie is certainly dated, but it's like the fact that this is Braddock, Pennsylvania in the mid 70s, I feel is very important, and it encapsulates dare I call it malaise? to use one man's word for it. Just kind of that gritty, grainy despair of the 70s. Like, just post Watergate, like everything fucking sucks. Nobody's happy. Like this town is desaturated as fuck. Our producer said that this movie was had a $250,000 budget, but he lied and it's only $100,000. True story, by the way.
So this is why it was shot in like the crew's home. Like this is why everything has a very lived-in appearance.
Yeah, and I love that. I don't like movies that look of any. It's more a problem nowadays, but
everything is kind of sort of stylized retro look to them.
No, movies of any age that look set dressed or like,
All right.
A movie that I really didn't care for, but I thought the production design and costuming were excellent is Steven Spielberg's Munich. Like, that movie looked like they made it in the fucking 70s. I don't know exactly how they did it. And, this movie, like, inextricably tied to its time and place, it is just so apt, even, like, more than 40 years later.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those movies that's so tied to a specific place and time that it becomes timeless. Like it's not trying to be anything it's not.
Yeah, it does exist within a particular context. Like Jen is saying.
And also because Martin's circumstances are so timeless, the movie is still relatable. I mean,
yeah, it's like if you had to invent a vampire in the mid-70s, like this is what it would look like.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Martin of today would be on Reddit. He definitely strikes me as a Reddit guy before his time. But he would still have kind of the same problems, I think, because like so many people are alienated today. That's why it still resonates.
It's very prescient, and it's still relatable because he's this random loser guy with like this shit job who lives with family still, and he's like just trying to get laid, trying to like find he doesn't really talk or go out or have any friends. Like that's just there are a lot of people like that who aren't even vampires. They just have this sad little life.
He needs to bootstrap himself up.
Yes.
Well, one thing that I want to tell the audience before we conclude is that there is a very nice transfer of this on YouTube right now. I could not find it on streaming, but hey, go over to YouTube and check out that unofficial.
Yeah, get it while you can.
Yank it down, because as it turned out, they were hoping to do this year, but I guess the restoration is taking a little longer than they originally estimated. They're doing this, they're restoring Martin for 4K, and they're expecting that it will be out in early 2022.
That'll be great to see. One of the funny things, too, that I like about the YouTube video is that the person who uploaded it, in the description, describes it as problematic LOL. It's just like you nitwit who has like no concept of like nuance or criticism. Be like, I don't know, the character in this kills women. I'm just saying,
cool. I was like, kind of toxic.
Yeah.
They still uploaded the whole thing, and they didn't make a video essay about how Martin embodies toxic male entitlement to women's bodies. So that would require work. Slam this person. Like, I'm not gonna knock this person who uploaded Martin for me to enjoy. So
I'm gonna knock them on that. I'm gonna knock them on a personal level of having stupid opinions.
For all I know, they were kidding, because like
they did say LOL.
Yeah. Oh.
That is a pretty funny way of conceptualizing the stuff that Martin does. Is like, problematic.
Yeah. Well, that is a meme of the cartoon figure with like the middle of their head caved in.
Which is what you think of, like they're watching it and they see him just start raping and murdering. They're like, nope.
Yeah. I can't endorse this because by presenting it, I implicitly endorse it, as everyone knows.
Yeah, well, that's how art works.
Yeah, you can't say something without like being in favor of it. I do have to give props to Romero for his concept and his script. I love the way that the mechanics of the two murder scenes, the two murder kind of set pieces. I just love the
Holy macaroni! I'm sorry, Tim, but the original cut of this was 165 minutes.
Damn, what the hell else is in there? How many other people does he kill?
Maybe more of him fucking Mrs. Santini.
Well, they probably
we get to see that lush 70s bush.
Oh yeah, you do. It's the fur bikini. You do see. There's kind of a montage where he provides his thesis statement at the end, where it's like, like I see you people and I see what you do, and they kind of trim that down into like, oh, he's gonna kill all these other people who like he had a problem with.
Oh yeah, because that old bitch yells at him in the deli.
Yeah,
he should have killed her.
Lazy kids these days. Which again, like, where are we now? Yeah, he's like, I know what people do. I watch them a lot, and I know what they do. So yeah, whether it's shitty people at the deli or if it's bored housewives cheating on their husbands, he's like, I'm not the only monster here. So yeah, in the same way that him running into this drug deal, it's like, what archetypal monsters might those represent? There are great ways that you can explain modern problems in this sort of mythological context. It's really interesting. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, just to recontextualize these things in a modern environment really adds an interesting new angle to it. I mean, even that his weapon of choice is, piercing a vein, just like a vampire would. It's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. This George Romero, he's going places.
Well, he did go somewhere to the grave. Rest in peace, King.
Yes.
Mike, before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to promote?
Go check me. Go
Justify
go on
yourself.
Twitter. Hey, go on Twitter.
Go on Twitter. Just follow Mike.
Yeah, everyone follow me at Bitter Corell, and also check out at midnight_pals for jokey japes about horror writers. And George Romero appears in there sometimes. It's very accurate.
That's right.